Good evening, and it's great to be back with all of you at home after this Thanksgiving holiday, and we'd like to interrupt your scheduled programming with a major development. Currently, numerous countries around the world are experiencing increasing rates of resistance to antibiotics. In particular, a strain of bacteria known as uropathogenic E. coli, or UPEC, which is responsible for causing urinary tract infections, is becoming increasingly resistant to trimethylprim sulfamethoxazole, ciprofloxacin, and amoxicillin clavulanic acid, antibiotics that are normally administered to stop the growth of these bacteria and treat urinary tract infections. High resistance rates to trimethylprim sulfamethoxazole have been reported in European countries such as Germany, Switzerland, Poland, Spain, Ethiopia, Mongolia, and Jordan. In India, the resistance rate has gone up from 52% to 59.6% in just 1 year. The excessive use of ciprofloxacin and other broad-spectrum antibiotics has also led to an alarming increase in antibiotic resistance in developing countries, with the cost of treatment and hospitalization increasing drastically. In Nepal, resistance to amoxicillin clavulanic acid has caused many children to become hospitalized. There are many concerns related to antibiotic resistance and how we can solve this global threat to biosecurity. And so we'll first hear from Jill, an infectious disease expert consultant, reporting from a hospital in Nepal on the benefits and risks of antibiotics to inform us about the significance of this increase in antibiotic resistance. Jill?
Thank you, Dev, for giving us an overview on the rapid rise of antibiotic resistance rates all across the world. So as we saw, it is critical to understand that antibiotics have the ability to slow down the growth and kill a variety of infection types. Additionally, antibiotics can act quite rapidly, and some of them can start working within a span of even a few hours. Another thing is that antibiotics are often quite easy to take, since most antibiotics are often taken orally. On the other hand, if an individual takes antibiotics frequently, the body can develop resistance to antibiotics, resulting in them being less effective over time. Another aspect of antibiotics is that taking antibiotics has another disadvantage of causing more harm and damage to the immune system if the treatment requires a prolonged use of antibiotics. Another risk of taking antibiotics is developing digestive issues and potentially even sensitivity to light. As a result, it is quite critical to understand any allergies or side effects for every individual before they are prescribed antibiotics as a way to treat the infection. And with that, we will send it to Maaz, who will talk about how antibiotic resistance impacts and why this is important. Thank you.
Good morning, Jill. As you can see, I'm currently standing outside the headquarters for the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, the CDC, here in Atlanta, Georgia. After speaking with experts here at the CDC, I wanted to share some extremely important information with our viewers regarding the rise of antibiotic-resistant bacteria such as UPEC. This is a topic that is not talked about enough, despite we as humans being the biggest stakeholders in this worldwide problem. Regardless of age, it is very likely that at some point we have been hospitalized for a procedure in which we are prescribed antibiotics. With the large number of ill people that hospitals treat, they become festering grounds for tons of bacterial strains, and this is why nosocomial or hospital-acquired infections are so common. However, with UPEC becoming increasingly resistant to the common antibiotics that we prescribe, these treatments will no longer be able to treat UTIs, which is a relatively common infection. This is a serious issue because if left untreated, urinary tract infections can worsen and the infection can spread to other parts of the body, such as the bladder or worse, the kidneys. Not only will this prolong the patient's stay in the hospital, it will make the hospital stay and treatment much more expensive. UTIs are just one example of an infection that is treated with antibiotics. Even prophylactic antibiotics that are given to, for example, a teenager who just got their wisdom teeth removed are at risk of no longer being effective due to a number of emerging resistant bacterial strains like UPEC. With this, we can see that there are many people at risk due to how common antibiotic use, or perhaps misuse, has become. And now to our reporter Angelina, we'll talk about the regulatory measures taken to control antibiotic resistance and some recommendations on public policies on how to control antibiotic resistance.
Thanks, Maaz. Coming at you live from the Federal Drug and Food Administration building. A large regulatory organization involved in combating antibiotic resistance is the FDA. The FDA has been encouraging the development of new antibiotics and antibiotic alternatives, and some of this encouragement comes in the form of incentives where the FDA is reducing the number of expensive studies required for phase 3 approval or waiving new drug application fees or other checkpoints in the drug approval process. The FDA has also been encouraging clinicians to use newly approved medications sparingly for patients that have limited treatment options, and have been amending labeling requirements of medications to remind patients and clinicians the risks in proper use of antibiotics. And the FDA has been partnering with the CDC on a public awareness campaign called Get Smart to educate the people on the proper use of antibiotics and the concept of antibiotic resistance. Despite all of the efforts to put new drugs on the market, it is important that global society embraces the idea of antimicrobial stewardship to prevent bacteria from becoming resistant to any new antimicrobial approaches. And that includes more regulation and further restrictions on which antibiotics should be used for treatment of common infections. It should all come down to the personalization of antibiotic treatment, where antibiotics are used responsibly. And Dev, back to you in the studio.
Thanks, Angelina. We hope this personalization becomes the new normal, especially in developing countries that need it the most. For now, we wish you all a good night. Take care.